This church year, I'm in a clergy seminar on congregation-based spiritual direction. For 3 days in November, another 3 in February, and the final 3 in May, I'm part of a group meeting at First UU in Richmond to learn about and practice the techniques of listening, reflection, and discernment. Let me unpack that a little. Whether you've ever had any sort of counselling or not, I'm sure you've experienced the value of being able to talk to someone else about what's going on in your life, particularly when it comes to any challenges that you might face. I know there have been plenty of times when I've been telling someone else about a problem, and simply by putting it into words for the other person, some idea occurs to me that never did when I was only thinking about it. Spiritual direction is something like that. You go to someone trained in listening, reflection, and discernment, and they explore with you what's going on for you. Now, for all that this trained person is usually called a spiritual director, they're not going to tell you what to do. As author of Spiritual Direction 101, Teresa Blythe puts it, "It is your path we are exploring, no one else's. The time you spend with a spiritual director is about you taking the next step along your spiritual path, not taking a step your director thinks you ought to take. For that matter, the spiritual part is up to you too. As Blythe explains, we don't tell you what you need to know, do, or have in order to be spiritual." So you go to a spiritual director with some challenge, and you start talking about it. And what's the most important thing that the spiritual director needs to do? Listen. Yes, listen, and listen deeply. It's the same deep listening that we practice in fellowship circles, the deep listening that Mary Elizabeth wrote about in her poem. Listening is essential. But unlike in fellowship circles, the spiritual director can ask questions about what you're saying. As Blythe notes, it's a reflective, contemplative interaction, so that as you talk about your life, the spiritual director can help you spiral deeper into areas where you find the most meaning. And the third place where depth comes in is discernment, a form of deep decision-making that focuses on choosing the best path for you, given your beliefs and values. Again, it's your choice to make, with the spiritual director only there to help and support you. In fact, the best way that spiritual direction works is when, according to UU ministers Sue Cinnamon and Philip Lund, who are leading the seminar, it is slow, silent, and simple. They used to say slow, silent, and stupid, but some people didn't like that. What they mean, though, is that the spiritual director isn't supposed to provide the answers, isn't even supposed to know the answers. And it's slow in the sense that it's deliberate and intentional, allowing plenty of time for contemplation, plenty of time, too, for silence. Silence is particularly important when a small group of people meet together with a spiritual director, which is what congregation-based spiritual direction would be. Someone shares what's going on in their life, then there's silence. The others in the group reflect back or ask clarifying questions, then there's silence. The person who shared responds, then there's silence. In other words, there's a lot of silence, and that's important, but it doesn't mean that it's easy if you've never done it before. So let's start small, holding the silence together for 1 minute, just like we did not too long ago in this service. You don't need to do anything during this time other than experience the silence itself, and I will ring this chime at the end of the 1 minute. Thank you. Hopefully that wasn't too difficult. It's the same 1 minute we did earlier, and 1 minute isn't very long after all. But what if we tried to be silent for longer than that? A couple of years ago, a study at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville got a lot of attention, which isn't too surprising when the headlines were all along the lines of people would rather give themselves electric shocks than sit quietly by themselves. Psychologists at UVA recruited students first, and then a wider selection of people for a very simple experiment. They were asked to sit by themselves in a room bare of external distractions for a time ranging from 6 to 15 minutes. They couldn't use their mobile telephones. They had nothing to read, nothing with which to write or draw. But one thing they could do was give themselves a mild electrical shock. Now, before the quiet time started, all of the people doing this, who had agreed to do this, tried shocking themselves, so they knew what it was like. And they declared that they would go so far as to pay money to avoid being shocked like that again. And yet, 1/4 of the women in these experiments and 2/3 of the men chose to give themselves electric shocks at least once, some of them more than one time, during their quiet time. As the researchers concluded, most people seem to prefer to be doing something rather than nothing, even if that something is negative. Oh, in case you think this was just young people, unable to put down their cell phones, no, these results held across all age groups. And that's not really surprising. Our brains have evolved to engage with the world outside our heads, and it usually takes training and practice to embrace silence instead. So we're doing our own experiment this morning, though I sincerely hope it doesn't drive anybody to stick their fingers into a power outlet. We just had 1 minute of silence, and next we're going to have 2 minutes of silence. Again, you don't have to do anything during the 2 minutes. Actually, that's sort of the point of it. Many participants in the UVA study, even if they didn't shock themselves, said that being quiet by themselves made it hard to concentrate. But this is something that the more you try to make it about doing, the more difficult it is to actually do. It doesn't come naturally to us, thanks to the way that we've evolved to interact with the world, but it is about letting go of doing and instead simply being. So now let's hold the silence together for 2 minutes. Again, I'll ring the chime at the end of the time. Silence is a rarity in our lives. Our tendency to always be on and the availability of technology to fill up every available second with, if not physical, then at least mental noise, means that we get to spend little time enjoying, appreciating silence. Indeed, many people are actively afraid of silence, so unfamiliar are they with simply being quiet. Silence is an essential component of being able to offer one another comfort and compassion, whether that's in fellowship circles or over coffee outside the sanctuary. It makes the difference between small talk, where each person has their own agenda, part of which is often to impress the other, and true listening, where one person's words are fully absorbed before the other speaks. Silence is rightly called a discipline. For most of us, it isn't easy. We're used to jumping in as soon as somebody else has finished speaking. Allowing a little time to hold someone's words may be difficult, but it deepens both the quality of what's said and the compassion with which the person is heard. So as we prepare to sit in silence once more, let us enter into a spirit of reflection and contemplation. As we sit together in this community, let us name the sacred in our lives, embracing that which sustains and nurtures us. Let us bring to mind our hopes and aspirations. Let us know in ourselves where we are weak and wounded. And let us find courage in our individual and common struggles. And in the shared silence we are about to experience once more, let us hear the voice of quiet stillness within, whether whisper of the divine or murmur of the conscience, guiding us, supporting us, encouraging us. And now let us hold the silence together for 3 minutes. Silence is not simply the absence of noise. Indeed, during these 1, then 2, then 3 minutes of silence, it hasn't really been quiet. There have been traffic noises. There have been noises from other people outside this sanctuary. There have been noises inside this sanctuary too. Coughing, shifting on chairs, the buzzing of the lights, the sound of others breathing in and out, even our own heartbeats. Silence is more than a physical condition then. It's a spiritual state, the opening of ourselves to the portions of reality that are usually drowned out by the buzzing and chittering of our own minds. Silence allows us to be receptive, not only to the voice of quiet stillness within, but also to the world, to our fellow beings, the interdependent web of all existence unfiltered by our own preconceptions. As put by Gordon Hempton, who seeks to preserve the few remaining places of natural silence in the world, silence is not the absence of something, but the presence of everything. Let us hold the silence together now for 4 minutes. May we seek out those opportunities to find ourselves blessed by the presence of everything, each and every day. So may it be.